Kurt Busch says he has multiple offers for the 2022 season. NASCAR has updated their COVID-19 protocols, and Corey LaJoie will not race this weekend due to COVID-19 protocols. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to another video. We've got a ton of NASCAR stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go just jump straight into those very quickly. We're going to start off Harrison's Workwear, as they will sponsor Josh Berry for 8 races in 2022. It was already previously announced that Tire Pros will be sponsoring Josh Berry for 9 races, and now he'll have 8 more races, which means Josh Berry currently has 17 races in place out of 33 or 34 races that the Xfinity Series has for the 2020 season. It's really great that a company like Harrison's Workwear is coming in to work with Josh Berry. It's great to see that a sponsor is willing to work with Josh Berry, and I think it's great for the sport overall. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Auto Owners Insurance. As Auto Owners Insurance has signed a contract extension with Joe Gibbs Racing to continue serving as a primary sponsor for Mark Truex Jr. at least through the 2022 season. Mark Truex Jr. has a contract through 2022. Auto Owners has been sponsoring Mark Truex Jr. since around 2016, so it does not surprise me that the blue colors are going to continue sponsoring Mark Truex Jr., considering Mark Truex Jr. has won quite a few races this year and a couple races in the past as well with that sponsor. It makes a lot of sense that Auto Owners is going to continue sponsoring. It's really great for the sport that there is a sponsor that is continuing to be committed to Mark Truex Jr. Is really good news overall for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Denny Hamlin. As Denny Hamlin has signed into a multi-year personal service deal with sunglasses maker Shady Rays. Another driver that is part of that is Eric Almirola, and Denny Hamlin will join Eric Almirola as a brand ambassador of it. Really cool to see that Shady Race is getting more involved in NASCAR. It's great to see that Denny Hamlin has been getting more partners. We've seen Denny Hamlin partner up with Domino's over the last couple years, and now we're seeing Shady Race pick up a sponsorship and a brand deal. I think it's really awesome to see that. It's great for the sport when you have somebody like this that can come in and help out. It's very good news overall for the sport and the series, and it's awesome news overall for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Taylor Gray. As Taylor Gray is going to be driving the 46 for DJR Racing in the Alec Crow 100 at Springfield Mile. Now, Fab Moffitt is going to be driving that 46 car tonight at Michigan International Speedway in the ARCA race, but ARCA has 2 races this weekend. They're also racing at the Springfield Mile as well. Taylor Gray's ran pretty solid in the ARCA races that he's ran. Of course, he's had that controversy a couple weeks ago, I think up at Elko Speedway. I'm not exactly sure which racetrack he had issues at, but he got involved in a really controversial wreck with Daniel Dye. That being said, Taylor Gray has, at points, shown what he can do on the racetrack, only age of 16. I would expect that Taylor Gray has a shot at contending at least for a top 5 with senior DJR cars, while they're not extremely fast in that series. We've seen the DJR cars run decently well, so I would expect that this car has a good shot at running up front, and I wish him the best luck to Taylor Gray this weekend at the Springfield Mile. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode. So we're talking about Justin Auger. As Justin Auger will be competing in the Alec Crow 100 and the Springfield Mile as well, he will be substituting for Kelly Kosky in the number 16 car. Justin Auger, I believe, is not competing in an ARCA race since he won the championship back in 2008. He actually won this event, I believe, back in 2006, and I'm not exactly sure how good Kelly Kosky's car is. I'm not exactly sure how well he's going to run, but I would not be surprised, especially with that veteran experience, I would not be surprised if the car is good enough. I would not be extremely surprised if Justin Allgaier is going up against guys like Corey Heim and Ty Gibbs for the victory. He probably could be the sleeper pick going into that event as well. So it's awesome that Justin Allgaier is going back to his roots. It's great for the sport when you have a driver that's overall doing it, and I'm really happy to see that he's going to be running that event. And now we're going to jump into the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about playoff banners. It was announced by Pop Pockers and NASCAR that there are some new updates in regards to playoff banners. The Cup Series will have yellow windshields, yellow spoilers, and a yellow rear and a yellow lower noses as well. The Xfinity Series, those will be red. They'll have red windshields, red spoilers, and red lower noses. And the Truck Series will be blue with blue windshields, blue rear spoilers, and blue lower noses. It's great to see that they're giving identity. Of course, it's basically the colors of the NASCAR logo, but I love the identity. Of course, it makes sense for Xfinity to have red, considering Xfinity has red on theirs. Makes sense for the Truck Series to have blue, considering that basically the Campo colors are blue. Very interesting in the Cup Series going back to yellow. The last time that we had colors of yellow on the playoff banners was in 2016. We switched over to lime or green in 2017. But we changed it back to, I think, all black after 2019 and 2020. And this year they've changed it up once again, and they're going to look yellow. I really like that they're changing up playoff banners overall. I think it's going to be a really good look, especially with some of the paint scheme, especially Chase Elliott's paint scheme that got revealed for the Southern 500. It looks really, really good on that one. So I do overall like that paint scheme a lot. I do like the playoff banner rules a lot. I think it's going to be good, and it's going to give at least some good identity for the drivers that are currently competing in the playoffs. We're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Sage Karam. As Sage Karam apparently is close to running another NASCAR Xfinity Series race, or another NASCAR race in general, as said by Jody Karam. They are still needing sponsorship, though, to run another NASCAR event. Sage Karam actually made his NASCAR Xfinity Series debut this past week in Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Road course actually ran pretty decent. He did have issues in practice, but once the race actually went green, I think he had a finishing in the top 20 in the Jordan Anderson racing car. And it would not surprise me overall if Jordan Anderson Racing is a team that Sage Karam is probably going to go to. And I think that's a pretty decent ride, considering we've seen a Jordan Anderson race car run really, really well. It could be Our Motorsports for all you know, but I think if it is a ride, I would assume that he'd probably go back to Jordan Anderson Racing again. He did very, very well, and I would assume that the race is probably going to run is the Charlotte Roval, considering that is a road course. So I would assume that Sage Karam is probably going to run the Charlotte Roval, and I would assume that Jordan Anderson Racing has to be the favorite once again for him to go to in that race. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Thor Sport Racing. As Thor Sport Racing has swapped crew chiefs for Gateway in their organization. Bud Havel is going to be going over from the 6-6 over to the 13, and Joe Shear Jr. will be moving over to the 6-6 from the 13. Bud Havel has been a crew chief at Thor Sport for a long time. He came back this year to crew chief for Paul Menard and Ty Majeski in the number 6-6 car. He has not been crew chief since 2019 when he crew chief for My Cider in the Truck Series. Joe Shear Jr. has been a long-term crew chief for Thor Sports organization and for Johnny Sauter really since basically the beginning of his career. And it's very interesting that Joe Shear Jr. and Johnny Sauter are no longer going to be working together. I find that interesting because they've worked together for such a long time, and it's really worked out for them. So I'm extremely surprised to see that they are breaking up that duo because, like I said, they've worked together very, very well. So hopefully this really doesn't have effect overall going forward, and we don't see any issues for that. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Connor Daly. As Connor Daly is going to be spotting for Ryan Truex tonight at Gateway International Speedway. Connor Daly will be running the Indy Car Race, I believe, I think it's for the Carlin Racing organization, so he's getting a little bit of spotting experience, and he's working East Motorsports in the past. We talked about it earlier this week on the channel, that Connor Daly basically said he would like to race in NASCAR more, so it looks like he's going to be getting a little bit of spotting experience. I think it's a great decision for him to get a little more of that experience in regards to the side of spotting, because I think it's going to be good for him to get a little bit of experience at the straight track. He has raced Gateway in the past, ran really well. He's also driven for the AJ Ford organization there, and he's never ran a Truck Series race at Gateway, but maybe getting a little bit of experience in the spotter side. Hopefully, this will help Ryan Truex going forward, and especially if it's different because we're seeing a lot of different spotters and different crew chiefs working this weekend. So it's interesting to see that Connor Daly is coming into NASCAR as spotter and not as a driver for East Motorsports. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Joey Gase. As Joey Gase is going to be driving a 15 for Rick Ware Racing this weekend here at Michigan International Speedway. Had originally been announced on the entry list that James Davison was going to be driver in that number 15 car, but there's been some changes. We've seen Joey Gase run a couple times this year, and I'll be honest, Joey Gase has really not been that impressive this year in his select starts in the NASCAR Cup Series. And of course, probably a lot of that has to do with the Rick Ware cars are really not that fast. We've seen those Rick Ware cars at times this year run really, really well in the top 25 and top 30. So I think the goal for Joey Gase to try to finish in the top 35, I think that would be a really, really good goal for him. The car is not really fast either, so I would assume he's probably going to do decent. He's not going to be 100% off the pace, but I'm not expecting really anything to go really that well off this. I don't expect much to come from this, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the starting lineups for the Cup Series, Xfinity Series, and Truck Races this weekend here at Gateway. Let's start off with the Truck Series. Austin Hill is going to be starting on the pole, and John Hunter Nemechek is going to be starting on the outside. My pick for this event is going to be John Hunter Nemechek. John Hunter Nemechek won this race in 2017, and he's also led a lot of laps race, so I do think that experience is going to come in. I think Austin Hill is going to be his biggest threat, not just this weekend throughout the championship, but I think John Hunter is going to win this weekend in the Truck Series. Now going to the Xfinity Series for Michigan. Austin Cindric is going to be on the pole for that, and AJ Allmendinger is going to be starting on the front row for that as well. Austin, my pick going in is actually going to be Ty Gibbs. I believe starting about 7th or 8th in the race. Ty Gibbs has been really, really good, especially that 54 car. Seems like it's one of the fast cars, regardless wherever we go. He hasn't raced on an oval last couple times, but I think Ty Gibbs is going to pick up the victory in the Xfinity Series race. And now to the Cup Series. Kyle Larson will be starting on the pole, and Chase will be starting outside. My pick is going to be Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson won here 3 times, all 3 in a row. Won the race in 2016, get his first career victory, and swept the race in 2017. I think that that will be who wins. I think Kyle Larson is going to pick up the victory, and I think he scores the victory here this weekend. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Auto Club Speedway. According to Jim Utter, apparently it lists the 2021 race weekend as February 26th through 27th for 2022, and February 25th as a practice day. So what it looks like to me is that Daytona is going to lead off the season as of right now, and it looks like Auto Club is going to be the second race. Now, for a very long time, from 2006 up to 2005, I think, up to 2011, they used to run Auto Club as the second race of the year, and I think a lot of this is due to the renovations of the track and reconfiguration of the track, because remember, they're going to be reconfiguring the track from a 2-mile track to a half-mile track. So I think it makes a lot of sense for them to do this earlier in the year. I would assume they're not going to do it later in the year, so I'd assume that's probably going to be the race that opens the West Coast. So what it looks like is Daytona is going to lead the season with all the opening up, or whatever the first race is, and then it will be going into Auto Club. So I think that's a great decision overall if it does end up coming to fruition, and I like that in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about a couple of the college racing stories. The story from the college racing news is in regards to what races they're going to be running at Cup. So Kaz Grala is going to run the 16 at Daytona next weekend, and they'll run there at Talladega as well. AJ Allmendinger is going to be running the 16 at the Charlotte Roval. So it looks like college racing is only going to be running 3 more races. Now, originally, they said that they were only running this year at the road courses, and they were running at the super speedways. Now, I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't be surprised if we'll at least see 1 or 2, maybe 1 win come from this organization, especially since they are the second fastest organization to win a race behind, I think, the J.D. Stacy organization. So this is really good to see that they're going to have both of their drivers back. They've had Kaz Grala in the super speedways, who's ran really well in those, and they're going to have the Dinger back at the Roval. Don't be surprised if the Dinger picks up the win at Charlotte Roval, and don't be surprised if Kaz Grala, at least for sure, gets top 5. Don't be surprised if things don't happen right there. Speaking of which, now jumping into the other side of the college story. I think it was Matt Collick who said as well during the Series M that he said that they are planning to run 3 cars for the Xfinity Series in 2022. AJ Allmendinger is going to be one of the drivers who will be returning there full-time next year. The big question is what happens to the other 2 cars, because Justin Haley is going to be going full-time in their Cup Series program. So what happens with there? I think that potentially they bring Jeb Burton back. Jeb Burton's been doing really, really well. He's had his best career Xfinity Series season to date. I would assume that Jeb Burton definitely is most likely to probably end up for sure going back to the team next year. There's probably going to be a run ride available, and I think that there are a few drivers that could be candidates. First one, I think, has to be Kaz Grala, who's been driving for the team this year. I would assume he has to be a candidate for a full-time ride, maybe going in there. Maybe Sheldon Creed maybe goes in the opportunity there. We'll have to see what happens in regards to Sheldon Creed, but there's talk about him wanting to go to Xfinity, and a lot of people think that he could be a favorite to go there next year. Maybe Zane Smith. Zane Smith's been driving for the college organization this year, has been driving for the college. It did a substitution for Justin Lee, had COVID-19, did pretty decent before crashing out, unfortunately, but was running really well in that event. And I think Matty D also has to be up for consideration as well if the rides do become available. But it's good to see the college racing is still going to be committed to Xfinity, having at least 3 cars next year. I'm really happy about it for sure, and great to see that they are going to at least have 3 cars next year. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Shane Wilson. As Shane Wilson has been suspended for 4 races due to the wheel assembly coming apart at the Indianapolis road course. If you watch the Indy road course race, that 39 team has absolutely struggled throughout the year, including at the Indy road course, from the whole wheel assembly and all the parts and pieces went out on the racetrack. And if you have that happen, you get a 4-race suspension. Now, things have also turned really, really bad if you are for Shane Wilson, as Shane Wilson has parted ways with RSS Racing, and Cowboy Starlin is going to be taking over. Now, Shane Wilson will not be basically crew chiefing for the team. I think he crew chiefs in the truck series as well currently for DJR Racing, so he's not out overall. This does not surprise me. The RSS Racing organization this year has absolutely struggled. You look at where they've been over the last year or two, they've not been really that good, so it really does not surprise me that they are making the decision in regards to that. I'm not surprised about it, and it's unfortunate it happened to Shane Wilson because, again, it's not 100%. It's somewhat Shane Wilson's bar because he kind of has to oversee everything, but people have got to do a better job when it comes to pit crews and stuff. So you can put some of the blame on Shane Wilson, but you also got to put some of the blame on the engineering side of things as well. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Joey Logano and Brad Keselowski. Now, there are going to be some spotter swaps that are going to be happening in regards to this team. They'll be swapping spotters here. So, Coleman Presley is going to be moving over from spotting from Brad Keselowski. He's going to be moving over to spot for Joey Logano. Apparently, he and Joey Logano are really good friends, so this makes sense. And TJ Majors is going to be going over to spot for Brad Keselowski. Now, this is in part to getting ready for next year, as they're doing this late in the year. We've seen Team Penske do some major crew chief shakeup. We just saw early last year do some crew chief shakeups. We saw Jerry Billings go over to Brad Keselowski. We saw Paul go over to Joey Logano, and we saw Todd Gordon go over and work with Ryan Blaney. And it looks like they're doing spotter swaps. I wonder if this means that TJ Majors might be going over to work with Brad Keselowski when he goes to Roush, or does this potentially mean that TJ Majors is going to be working with Austin Cindric? TJ Majors is an awesome spotter when it comes to the super speedways, so I'd assume if Brad is to get TJ Majors, I would assume at Daytona he is going to do a lot better and be a really, really good spotter. So I hope this change can benefit the organization overall. We've seen Penske do some major changes over the last couple years, trying to make the collectives together. Because let's be for real, Team Penske, especially this year, they've had a down year. They've only this year collectively won 3 races, so they've kind of had a down year compared to past years. I mean, I think 2 of their guys are still in the top 10 in points, but they've kind of struggled throughout the year at points this year. So I wonder if this change will make some benefits. We're not exactly sure on that, but it's good to see that they're making changes on that front. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Christopher Bell. Christopher Bell actually, on Wednesday, tested the next-gen car at Bristol. Now, there's really not much to talk about from here. A lot of people are really complaining about the engine sets that the car is making. It's definitely different, I will give you that, but I really like the engine sounds that they're basically doing that. I really like the engine that's coming off it. It sounds really cool in my opinion. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me on that, but I really like the engine sounds that are coming off of that. I think it sounds really cool, and I'm really definitely getting more. I mean, I'm definitely a little points kind of worried. I think a lot of people are expecting this car to be good off the get-go. Let's be for real. Let's keep our some reasonable expectations. Let's not expect the car to be absolutely perfect from the get-go. These teams are going to be tinkering once, because they're all expected to have the car. So expect these teams to basically be tinkering this up in regards to that action car. So teams are expected to have a test. All the teams are supposed to be expected to have their own test, because again, this is a single tire test. And a lot of people were talking about how there was off-throttle time. Bristol, you're going to be going off-throttle regardless. So really not much to talk about here, but there was an action test at Bristol. I believe that the next test is going to be happening here next month at Daytona, where we'll see every single team. I would not be 100% shocked and 100% surprised if we see every single team go. I would not be surprised if we see preseason Thunder come back for next year. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but we had the next-gen test take place, and there was a lot to talk about in regards to that. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Sheldon Creed. Sheldon Creed was speaking to the media for the Truck Series Post-Media Day on Tuesday night, and he says he is getting close on his 2022 plans. Says his Xfinity Series is his primary choice, but did not rule out the Truck Series or the Cup Series. Says he is close and hopes to get his deal done in the next few weeks. This is not surprising that Sheldon Creed wants to go to Xfinity. He's talked about it in the past. He was on Davey Siegel's podcast on Front Stretch. He was on his podcast talking about he wants to go to Xfinity Series next year. He did mention GMS definitely has an opportunity, but he doesn't want to be running in 30th. Yes, he does bring fun, but he doesn't want to be running 30th every single week. Sheldon Creed, I think, absolutely deserves to move up. He won the championship last year in 2020. He's done extremely well this year. So, well, he's been a little bit under the radar this year. A lot of people have not talked about him, even though at points this year. I've been really impressed with him this year. He's been running pretty decent, considering he's been the only one at GMS this year that seems to really have their stuff together right now. So, I think that right now, Sheldon Creed's overall best option in regards to where he go next year. I think Kaulig Racing has definitely got the best option, but you think about Junior Motorsports. Junior Motorsports definitely could have an opportunity. We know that Junior Motorsports has a couple of their drivers confirmed for next year. Justin Auger has pretty much a long-term deal because Kelly Renard is a brand ambassador of the Brandt organization. And, you know, we already have confirmation that Sam Mayer is going to be with the team and Josh Berry is going to be with the team. So my assumption currently right now at this given moment is that if he doesn't go to Junior Motorsports comes available, he may go there. But don't be 100% surprised if he ends up at College Racing next year. We'll have to see and wait and see what happens. But I think he absolutely deserves to go, Xfinity. He's done really, really well in the last couple years. And he has a win this year at Darlington. Wasn't very happy with Marcus Moses after that. But I think that Sheldon Creed is going to end up in the NASCAR, is going to end up in the Xfinity Series next year. And now we're going to jump to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Josh Berry. As Josh Berry is going to be substituting for Michael Annett this weekend at Michigan due to the leg injury. For a lot of you don't know, Michael Annett basically had a leg fracture, had to get surgery during the off weeks. He came back and ran at Watkins Glen, but he basically aggravated that back at the Indy Road Course, and Chase Elliott had to substitute for him, and now Josh Berry is going to be back in the ride. As for Michael Annett, I'm definitely wishing him the best luck and a speedy recovery. I think at this point, it would be best for him if maybe he just took off for the rest of the season. I know he probably doesn't want to take off for the rest of the season, but I think it'd be best for him to kind of take a little bit of a break in racing right now, considering, you know, you don't want to really aggravate those injuries and continue racing. So I would assume Michael Annett's probably still going to want to run, but if he can't come back for the playoffs, because again, he's losing more points to Riley Herbst, he's now outside of the playoffs currently at the moment, I would assume probably right now as we speak, probably he's going to be out for a little bit. He's probably going to take it a little slower. So don't expect Michael Annett to be racing at least for the next weeks. He might come back later in the year. But as for Josh Berry racing, I think he has a very strong shot of running and contending for the win. This one car, when he's been in the ride or whoever else has been in the ride, he's run really, really well. And whatever driver's been in the car has run really well. So I do think that Josh Berry has a really, really good opportunity and a really good shot to compete overall for the victory of the event. I think he'd be a surprising sleeper pick to win the event. I think he gets the top 5 this weekend in that one car and helps out one cars in the owner's points position. And now we're going to the next story of today's episode. So we're talking about Noah Grayson. Now, Noah Grayson was speaking to the media recently in regards to what his 2022 plans are, and he says he has no comment on the Josh Berry signing that took place on Monday afternoon. He says his focus is on finishing the 2021 season. Judging from his body language, Noah Grayson does not overall seem confident about returning to Junior Motorsports next year. And it's really, really unfortunate because I do think a lot of the issues that he has had this year really have not been 100% on him, because I'll be for real with this one. I think Noah Grayson has had an up and down year. He should already have a win at Homestead this year. Unfortunately, there was a freak accident that took place where basically David Starr had a tire go down with literally 3 laps ago, and Noah Grayson really had nowhere to go, unfortunately. And it really, really is unfortunate to see that Noah Grayson may be out of right now. Like I said, Junior Motorsports may expand to a 5-car team, and they may keep all their drivers in there, keeping Michael Annett in the 1, unless he decides to retire after this leg injury. Keep Justin Auger in the 7, put Noah Grayson in the 9, maybe put Sam Mayer in the 88, Josh Berry in the 8, and keep the organization together. But I have a feeling that if Noah Grayson's body language, I'm really, really not confident in regards to him returning. And again, if he doesn't go back to the scene, where does he go next year? I really don't know, to be perfectly honest with you. Maybe he goes up to the Cup Series, but I don't think he's overall ready for the Cup Series. I would assume Noah Grayson, like I said, he does have some funding from Bass Pro Shops and Black Rifle Coffee, so maybe they'd be able to go with him, but I would assume the Junior is going to want to keep Bass Pro Shops and Black Rifle Coffee inside his organization. So to me, I want to see Noah Grayson come back to Junior Motorsports this year and get another opportunity. I know this year has been a down year. I mean, compared his average finish this year to last year, his average finish last year was 8.1. He had 2 wins. He hasn't won a race this year, and he has a 15.5 average finish. And a lot of it's really not been his fault, unfortunately, with all of his issues this year. But I really hope Noah Grayson has an opportunity to come back next year, because I think he deserves it. I think he absolutely deserves to come back next year and race, and hopefully he'll get that opportunity to race again with Junior Motorsports next year, as I do think he absolutely deserves an opportunity. And now we're going to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kyle Larson. As Kyle Larson last night did it again. He won the Brian Clausen 39 Nationals at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He already had won the primary race, the early race, preliminary event before on Wednesday night, and now he's able to win last night once again. He had to hold off a hard-charging Brady Bacon for the victory. Brady Bacon's a really, really good driver that runs in midgets. Brady Bacon was literally right behind him and almost actually was able to steal the victory for Kyle Larson, but Kyle Larson held them off. Kyle Larson also won $15,000 last night as well. This, I believe, is Kyle Larson's 22nd or 23rd win overall when it comes to motorsports. And you look at what Kyle Larson is absolutely doing right now in motorsports right now. It is absolutely incredible. He's won the Knoxville Nationals. He just won the BC 39 Nationals. He's won the Chili Bowl. He's won the Prairie Dirt Classic, the All-Star Race, the Coca-Cola 600, among other, and the Kings Royal, not to mention. He has won so many major events this year, and he is having one of the greatest motorsport seasons. I mean, we're talking about maybe him potentially thinking about a possibility of running the Indianapolis 500 because he's just been so damn good this year. He's been incredible to watch regardless, and a lot of people compare him to Mario Andretti and AJ Foyt, and rightfully so. He's done a lot of things. He's gotten every single car, and it seems like regardless of what car he gets into, he's going to compete. So it was awesome to see that Kyle Larson won last night. I thought that Kyle Larson overall was going to win. He's not won this. I don't think he's won this event before. Did he win it last year? I'm not exactly sure. But Kyle Larson, once again, won another big race here. It's also, I think, it's like his 70th win since 2020. So he's been doing absolutely phenomenal things. And it's great to see that Kyle Larson, once again, won last night at the Brian Clausen 39 Nationals. We're going to on the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Tony Hershon. Tony Hershon is not going to be spotting this weekend for Kyle Busch or any race this year as he has apparently tested positive for COVID-19. Apparently he is asymptomatic, so he's not sick. He doesn't really have any infection, but he will not be there this weekend. Jason Hedleski will be spotted for Kyle Busch. Jason Hedleski has a lot of experience in the NASCAR Cup Series. He spotted for Matt Kenseth and Carl Edwards in the last couple years for this team. He spots, I think, in the NASCAR Xfinity Series for Brandon Jones currently at the moment. Hayden Reeves is going to be spotting for Daniel Hemrick, and Drew Herring spots from Mark Chase Jr. Cup Series will be spotting tonight in the NASCAR Truck Series for John Hunter Nemechek. Wishing the best luck and a very speedy recovery for him. I don't know how much effect this will have on Kyle Busch. I'm wondering if Jason Hedleski, especially with this Cup Series experience, wonder if this will really help overall Kyle Busch run a little bit better. Not saying that Tony Hershon's bad spotter. I think he's an absolutely legendary spotter. So I think it's very interesting that he's out. It sucks that he's out for sure because I'd like to see Tony Hershon come back really, really soon. Hopefully he's feeling really better, wishing him well and speedy recovery, and hope we're going to see him out at the racetrack very, very soon. And hopefully we'll see him come back. Again, I want to see Tony Hershon back because I think he's the first spotter in a long time that unfortunately has been infected. So it really is unfortunate to see that. Hopefully we'll see Tony Hershon come back to the track extremely soon. I'm wishing him the best of luck for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about some COVID-19 policies. We're jumping into the May COVID-19 protocols. It was reported yesterday by Bob Poggers that the policy for close contact on non-vaccinated individuals is 7 days in accordance, and you have to quarantine for 7 days in accordance, and you have to have a negative test. If you're vaccinated, there's no quarantine, but must get tested 3 to 5 days after exposure. I think this makes a lot of sense that they're doing, especially since the playoffs are coming up at the moment. It makes a lot of sense. They're basically wanting to quarantine everybody currently at the moment to make sure everybody's all right. And I think this is a very good decision overall for NASCAR to make sure everything is good. Because again, you don't want any of your drivers that are currently in the playoffs, especially affected by this stuff. So I think it is the right decision overall for NASCAR to make this. Again, this is in accordance to the CDC. Again, the CDC has made a lot of changes over the last year or two in regards. They've not exactly been the most consistent when it comes to the COVID-19 pandemic, but I think that this overall is the right call in regards. I think that they're making the right decision overall, and I'm glad at least they're keeping up to date with this stuff because, again, NASCAR has to follow the rules. They have sponsors and obligations stuff that they have to keep in place, so I think this is the right call overall for NASCAR to do this, and I think this is a great decision overall for sure. Happy to see that they're keeping up with this. And now we're going to jump to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Iowa Speedway. Now, it was announced yesterday that Indy Car announced that it will hold 2 races in 2021, both sponsored by Hy-Vee. It will be a doubleheader. It will take place on July 23rd and 24th in 2022. The reason we're talking about this today is that they are running it from NASCAR. There's been talks for a while that they were going to be bringing Iowa Speedway back to the Indy Car Series, with Hy-Vee being the major backer for that. And like I said, it was announced yesterday that this is taking place. This is huge, huge news for you IndyCar fans. A lot of IndyCar fans have been frustrated with the fact that there has been a lack of ovals this year. There were only, I think, 3 races on ovals. One of them at Gateway this year. I think 4 oval races. One on Gateway this year, one at the Indianapolis for the Indianapolis 500, and then a doubleheader at Texas Speedway. And generally, I'm not the biggest fan of doubleheaders, but for Iowa Speedway especially, I think that this is the right call, especially since the racing at Iowa Speedway has been absolutely fantastic. The fact that they did not bring Iowa Speedway back in general to any other motorsport site, ARCA, was really, really frustrating. And you never know, I may go out to this event as well. Something else noted in regards to the car for Rail Letterman Lanigan Racing, the 45 car is going to be fully funded as well for their third car. But another big thing for you IndyCar fans, is this race going to be televised on NBC? Absolutely. This race is going to be televised on NBC, which I'm really, really happy that it is going to be televised on NBC, because I think it's a really, really good thing if you can get a big race like this on NBC. Remember, IndyCar is going to have 13 races on NBC, so we know for sure at least a couple events that are going to be on NBC, and I'm really happy that we're going to see Iowa Speedway back on the schedule, especially in IndyCar. The fact that it's going to be on a major, major audience, it's awesome for sure. I'm really, really happy about it, and I'm glad that they're bringing Iowa Speedway back onto the IndyCar schedule. I hope that NASCAR could have a doubleheader really, really soon. And now we're going on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Corey LaJoie. As Corey LaJoie is out this weekend due to COVID-19 protocols, apparently someone in his team, in his studio where he does his Sacking Money's podcast, apparently that had been infected with COVID-19, and he has to quarantine for 7 days. Josh Berry is going to be substituting for him. Josh Berry is already becoming a super sub in the series. He'll be actually running all 3 races this weekend. He'll be running a Gateway in the Truck Series for Rackley Roof. He'll be driving a 1 for Mike Lynette, and now he'll be driving this weekend in substitution for Corey LaJoie. First of all, wishing Corey LaJoie the best of luck. Apparently, he says he does minor symptoms, but apparently he's fine. He said his immune system can basically fight off the stuff. Now, Spire Motorsports is expected to apply for a waiver for Corey LaJoie to compete in the NASCAR Class. If he's able to win Daytona again, I'm not exactly sure how likely that is going to be, but they are going to apply for a waiver for him. I would assume that NASCAR is going to grant that waiver. I'm not exactly sure if they would, because again, we only have 1 race to go till the Class after this weekend, so they may not grant that, but I assume they probably would grant that, considering it is an unfortunate circumstance right there. But in regards to Josh Berry getting another opportunity to race in the Cup Series, I think this is a great opportunity for him. We've seen the 7 car run in the top 20, so unlike the 77 car that he ran at Dover, Josh Berry, I think, has a good shot of competing for top 20. Especially these cars are capable enough for him, and how good of a driver he is, especially with the experience that he is going to have coming event. I think that Josh Berry is going to have a really good opportunity to run up in front in the event. I'm happy that he is going to be running once again. I'm happy because it's good to see that Josh Berry gets more opportunities. But again, I'm wishing the best of luck for Corey LaJoie. Hopefully he comes back really, really soon. Hopefully he's back at Daytona and he's not out longer. He had announced yesterday, so he could be eligible if the negative test comes back. He could be eligible if the test comes back negative. He could come back next week at Daytona, but we have to wait and see what happens. But if he doesn't come back, I would assume Josh Berry will get another opportunity to race in the 7 car. But it's unfortunately that Corey LaJoie is out due to this, and he says we can all learn from this and stuff. And hopefully we'll see him back really, really soon on the racetrack. Wishing the best luck, and hopefully we'll see him out on the racetrack here again really, really soon. And now we're going to go and jump on to the first of 2 major stories of today's episode, as we were talking about updated COVID-19 protocols. NASCAR on, I think it was Tuesday evening, sent out a major protocol announcement, and they've updated a lot of their COVID-19 protocols in regards to media access and driver access as well. Media engagements are going to be conducted in a controlled manner, and media will be required to wear a mask at all times. Drivers will not be required, but media members are going to be required to wear masks. Media members will be permitted access with a hard card, and it's very, very difficult to get that hard card, apparently. No guest access to team haulers or garage stalls. No grid access for guests, and apparently for pit passes, pit passes apparently are not going to be a thing at all. There will be strict enforcement of mask wear in enclosed areas. NASCAR will probably kick you out if you're not wearing your mask. Drivers are prohibited from visiting suites, and driver movement routes will be planned to eliminate casual driver/fan interactions. This is being done in part due to the fact that currently in the country right now, there is a huge rise at the moment of the COVID-19 pandemic. Even people that are vaccinated or unvaccinated, there has been a huge rise of people getting infected with COVID-19 in the last month or so, especially with this Delta variant that's been rising in the country. It makes a lot of sense that they're doing this. And I think it makes a lot of sense that they're doing this. Again, I'm not going to tell you my thoughts on COVID-19, but I think a NASCAR overall is making the right call in this situation. Especially you have a lot of sponsors, especially Fortune 500 companies that are sponsoring NASCAR. You have to basically obligate with them. On top of that, you don't want your drivers getting infected with COVID-19. You don't want that to become a much bigger problem, and you want to make sure everything does go right for that. So I think that NASCAR overall is making the right call right here, especially for the health and safety of everybody involved. I'm glad that NASCAR is making the right call right here in regards to that. And again, hopefully we don't see any other people unfortunately get infected with this. in the industry. And I'm not saying sure how many people are vaccinated in the industry. We know a few drivers that are, but I think NASCAR is making the right call right here to update those policies. Again, I'm not I expected NASCAR to basically update it. It's unfortunate. If NASCAR had the choice, I don't think they would overall go and do it, to be honest with you. But if you have a lot of companies that are involved in your sport, you have to obligate with them. So to me, I think that this is overall the right call, in my opinion. I'm really happy that they're keeping up the tab and stuff, and it's great for the industry. Well, it's not great for the industry, but it's the right call, in my opinion, and it's the moral compass, in my opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the final major story of today's episode. We finally reached it, as we are talking about Kurt Busch. Now, Kurt Busch was at a media event this past week in South Carolina on Tuesday in promotion for the Southern 500, and he announced that he has 2 offers for the 2022 Cup Series season. I'm surprised he has 2 offers. Now, we know one of those offers is got to be 23XI Racing, but the fact that he has 2 offers is really, really interesting. Now, he reiterated that it is not the Fox Sports booth. He says that a Fox Sports booth is calling his name eventually when his driving career is over. Now, Kurt Busch is going to be commentating the rest of the Truck Series races, the last 7 races, all the playoff races. He's going to be commentating the Truck Series booth, which I think is going to bring a lot of information to the booth and bring a lot to the ears. And he's also really, really good at his job as well. But let's talk about the Cup Series. The fact that he has 2 offers is definitely really, really interesting. Now, I think this is in part due to the fact that 23XI Racing does not have a second charter. There's been reports that they are trying to maybe partner up with Front Row Motorsports and get a charter from them, or buy the organization as a whole and buy up the team. They have potentially 3 charters for the organization, and also Rick Ware's definitely open up as well, and they could probably get a charter from there, but they don't have a second charter right now, so I think that's why he has 2 offers going into next year. With 23XI Racing, though, not being the only team, I wonder what is the other team that could be looking at Kurt Busch. And I think that there are a few potential opportunities. First one has to be Auger Racing. Auger Racing has been extremely competitive, has been pretty competitive this year in their select starts, and they've done really, really well this year so far, especially in their select starts in the Cup Series, with them also winning a race at the Indianapolis Road Course. On top of that, they seem to be very, very competitive. They're on the level of RCR. They've run really well. Again, they've not run any of the other tracks besides the road courses and the super speedways, but again, NASCAR is going to be going more toward that direction in regards to road courses, so they're updating that, and I think that they would be really, really good, especially since Kurt Busch has been really good on the road courses as well, and they've been solid this year, and he'll have Justin Haley work with as well. The only other team I could think of is GMS Racing. GMS Racing is looking to go to Cup next year. They're looking to be really, really fat. I mean, they're looking to try to get a charter next year. Maybe looking up. They're not exactly sure if they're going to run full-time or part-time next year. They haven't confirmed that at this moment, but I would assume that has to be a team that's up for grabs as well. And Kurt Busch definitely has funding. I think that's what they're going to need, is funding to run next year in a charter. They could get a charter from them. I assume that they have to be in talks with Rick Ware to try to get a charter to run their Cup Series program this year. So that's definitely a team you have to look. Now, I think most likely, though, Kurt Busch is going to end up at 23XI Racing next year. I think, one, he'll be working with Bubba Wallace next year and help Bubba Wallace become a much better driver. Bubba Wallace really needs a veteran teammate, and I think he'll bring a lot of information, including to Bubba Wallace, and help him out and become a much better driver. And I think it also would be a big benefactor, 23XI Racing, also for sponsorship sake as well. He has Monster Energy backing with him. And, of course, he's won a Cup Series championship in 2004, and regardless of what team he seems to go to, he seems to bring a lot of energy to those teams. So I think Kurt Busch is going to end up at 23XI Racing next year, but again, if they can't acquire a charter, I think that this is going to be the biggest disappointment of his silly season, because we've assumed for a long time, really since back in May, that Kurt Busch was 100% going to go to 23XI Racing 100%, but if they can't get a charter next year, that's really, really unfortunate. Again, they could run an open car, but apparently, if you're an open team, you apparently are not going to get the stuff. So I would assume that they are going to try to get Kurt Busch next year and drive for 23XI Racing. But you never know. He could end up another organization. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But Kurt Busch apparently has multiple offers for next year. And we'll have to wait and see what happens, because assume that those announcements should be coming really, really soon. So, anyway, that is going to be for today's NASCAR news and IndyCar news video as well. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, turn to notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Support page on links below for that, and comment your thoughts on today's episode. Do you think Kurt Busch is 100% going to 23XI Racing, or do you think that Kurt Busch is going to end up another team? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about all the other major stories we discussed here today on the channel? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great and awesome NASCAR content like this. Take care, everybody.